The Vatican has done it again. It demonstrated that they're not run by terribly serious people. The Synod on Synodality has shown that to be the absolute truth. And unserious people sometimes make serious gaffes with their messaging. They demonstrate that they are out of touch with reality most of the time. And in this case, they've demonstrated that they, meaning the Roman Curia, are concerned about reaching out to young people, and not surprisingly, they've traditionally used World Youth Day as their means of doing that, though the more recent World Youth Day celebrations were, by all accounts, absolute train wrecks, with the Eucharist handled in a way worse than some Protestant groups who don't even believe in the real presence treat their, what they call, Eucharist. They've demonstrated, Rome has, that they do not understand what it is young people actually want. They've shown that they are out of touch with the youngest people today. Great example of this is Traditionis Custodes, because young people are being drawn more and more to traditional Catholicism, the old form of the Mass, traditional sacraments and devotions. And if they can't get the traditional Mass, then they try to find the most reverent ordinary form Mass, or they go to an Eastern liturgy. We are a big tent on this channel when it comes to traditionally minded Catholics. But young people are, at least in many cases, attempting to live a life like Catholics did before about 60 years ago. And Traditionis Custodes took that away from most young Catholics. And I guess that's not what Rome has in mind with youth outreach. I'm going to show you something here, and it involves anime. I'm going to make it very clear. I'm not against anime as anime. If you want to watch anime, just like anything else in the popular culture, do so with some discernment. Don't watch anything that is obviously impure or mocks the faith, or is otherwise a near occasion of sin that requires you to go to confession. I don't care what kind of movies you like. I don't care what kind of music you like. I just don't want that stuff in the Mass or part of church messaging. That's it. To me, a hip-hop Mass or a heavy metal Mass or a country music Mass is as cringe-inducing to me as trying to reach out to young people by pandering to them with pop culture things that these cardinals do not even begin to understand. Okay, use discernment. Don't care what it is you're doing in your own time, as long as it doesn't separate you from God and put you into a state of mortal sin. And this story is a great example of this. You see, they decided that because young people like anime, they'd make an anime mascot for the coming Jubilee Year of Mercy. And I'm not critiquing the Jubilee Year of Mercy here per se. The messaging is what I'm critiquing. I actually think the Jubilee Year of Mercy is one of the very best things that Francis does in the church. Because it provides encouragement and rewards in the form of plenary and full indulgences for making use of the sacraments at specific places with specific intentions. That his last Jubilee Year of Mercy was, at least on paper, the intentions were actually Catholic. And so it's a good thing, assuming he has actually has the authority of the papacy to do such things. And even then, if you go do the things and it turns out some future pope rules him an anti-pope, adoration, praying for intentions, and praying for the holy souls in purgatory and all the other things that go with the Jubilee Year of Mercy still get you indulgences anyway. So the Jubilee Year of Mercy here is not my target. But this year, in addition to a Jubilee Year of Mercy, which I think is a good thing, we get this from Michael Haynes, LifeSite News reporter on Twitter. Vatican unveils the official mascot for the 2025 Jubilee year as preparation increases and pre-Jubilee events approach. It's designed by Tokidoki creator Simone Legno, who highlights his Italian Catholic heritage. His company promotes First Deadly Sin Month in June. They really should do some basic checking on this, but oh wait, critiquing that's not synodal. It's not the synodal thing to do. So in accordance with the new religion, we'll keep our critiques of sin to a bare minimum. Here's the actual image. Yeah, this isn't me just not getting it, right? This is official church messaging. Note the rosary. Some people have tried to say that this is a use of the James Martin style, the sign of God promising not to flood the world anymore, that has been co-opted by the agents of Satan. The sign given by God had 7 different colors on it. The one for the forces of evil in the world has 6. That's not a coincidence. I don't think it has to do with that, though, because these colors don't actually even come close to matching that. Take a look over here up in the upper left-hand corner. That's actually the Jubilee year symbol. the cheap clip art that I've critiqued in the past. You're just seeing those colors there on a rosary being worn as a necklace. Typically, a rosary is not supposed to be worn as a necklace. However, St. Louis de Montfort and others have written about how exorcists will sometimes wear a rosary as a necklace. Now, the difference is they're not wearing it as jewelry. They're wearing it as a sacramental during an exorcism. It's a bit different. You see there, that's supposed to be the Holy Spirit. This is the Luce, as the name is. Now, you did look up the name. Luce is a name that means light. So some people are suggesting, hey, light bringer. I don't know if they thought that deeply into this. Others are pointing out that this thing looks suspiciously like that Stang that Francis was given before the Pan-Amazon Synod. Again, I don't think they thought that deeply into this. I'm not one who thinks that they're trying to, that the Vatican has a devotee of Satan behind every rock and is trying to show the world what they're doing. I don't think they thought that deeply about this entire process. There's just a lot of symbolic meaning for every one of the things here by their own admissions. We'll go through all of it. So the angel, complete with a diaper, because I guess angels are now babies. The angel represents a union between earthly experience and the presence of God in life, offering courage in moments of solitary suffering. It symbolizes God's presence accompanying each person's journey. A guardian angel is a companion through life. And they're not saying that angels are symbolic. They're saying the angel in this specific image is symbolically representing something. Difference. Light, luce in the eyes. These represent the vision of the light of God and the journey towards it. Light is a symbol of hope. The red represents love, action, and sharing. Yellow, orange signifies human warmth. Green evokes peace and balance. Blue recalls security and protection. Light in the eyes, the shape of the design resembles a shell, a symbol of perseverance in the faith. The dog was for San Rocco, a sign of divine providence that assisted him in times of extreme need. It symbolizes his fidelity to God's calling. The dog is also a symbol of friendship. The sailor's raincoat, a symbol of journeying through the storm, is indicated by the waves in the logo. It shows that life's pilgrimage doesn't always navigate calm waters. Like the sandochino, the short canvas cloak that served to protect pilgrims from the elements, it symbolizes divine protection and the pilgrimage towards eternity. The iconic yellow of the sailor's raincoat is supposed to be for the Holy See, where people are going on pilgrimage. The dove is a symbol of the Holy Spirit. It's also a symbol of purity, the search for God, freedom, and messenger of peace. The anchor is the symbol of hope. Where's the anchor? Right there on that logo. I don't see another anchor here unless I am missing something. The bourdon, the walking stick, that's what they're calling it, not a stang, evokes the arduous journey of the pilgrim. The symbol symbolizes the pilgrimage of life, a journey toward eternity. It could very well be a stang, but I really sincerely doubt it. I don't think forces of evil want to project that obviously on people. The rosary beads represent a life filled with deep prayer. They symbolize simple daily Christian prayer. And then there's dirty boots about humility. I think you get the idea. Lots of symbolism there. Note the logo for the Jubilee year on the front of the jacket. The artist. Need I say more? I mean, look at this. All the slogans of Satan for that evil month, right there on display for you. I'd say they don't vet these people, but they do. And there's the artist. And because I think that picture is actually a little modest, we'll keep it to a minimum. I would say they don't vet them. They clearly do. Remember, the synodal church will have a James Martin face. That's what it will have. I think that has much more to do with what's going on here than trying to let everybody know that, that they find the Wicked Witch of the West to be something that they really like or something. I don't think that's where they're going with this. But for those who really want to see it, I mean, there's the image shared at the press conference. I do think this is really dumb. Like I say here on X, nothing can be dumber than a synod on synodality, right? Well, the Vatican hold my apple teeny. I don't think this is what they're calling the stang. Again, I tend to be skeptical of the claim that this is a stang. I've gotten a lot of people who are pushing back on X, by the way. I seem to have angered Catholic anime Twitter for some reason with this. But again, there's pop culture things I like. I don't want them to be used as marketing tools for the church or used in the mass. And that's kind of my kind of thing about this. But there's also a messaging failure here. A rather serious one too, because according to Matt Gaspers, the 2025 marks the 1700th anniversary of the First Council of Nicaea, and this would be an appropriate image for the Jubilee year. Sacred art, or even a tastefully done That's my caveat. More up-to-date presentation of this. Because the Council of Nicaea was not exactly a small moment in the history of the church. But they're missing a grand opportunity here to remind people of our own history, to really drive that home. But instead, they're doing the weirdest youth outreach. And this is why I say these are unserious people, because they are out of touch with Catholics in general. We saw that with the Synod, where everything was up for grabs. And then the final document really did confirm a lot of our fears that that's what they want to do. And to give you an idea of how unserious they are, here's Father Dwight Longenecker, who's not exactly a radical traditionalist by any stretch of the imagination. He says this picture sums up too much of 21st century Christianity, an old codger trying ever so hard to be cool. Again, you've seen the Hello Fellow Kids meme? Hello Fellow Young People meme? That's this. This is the Catholic version of that now. And I'm not the only one saying this, because we are now getting mocked by all sorts of Christian media for it, which I'm not surprised by. I don't really care that they're mocking us. But this is one that's going on here as a response to that is what's going on in there, the presentation, Mascot for the Holy Year. We're reaching out to the young people because, of course, they are. This whole thing is tone deaf. The reason that you're seeing that image is more sinister is this is so tone deaf because right now there's a case going on called the Principi case. I reported on it a few days ago. And the Rupnik story is going on in the background, but it's fading from our collective memory already. And there's a general sense with all of this that Rome has done nothing about priests who go after the most vulnerable in their spare time. In fact, that Francis has been caught multiple times shielding these men from justice. That in light of all of that, with the Principi case going on, it's pretty tone deaf to be doing this stuff. Hence, the sinister-looking meme like this one that you're seeing here. Again, I'm not going to give a lot of time to the accusation that there's a Stang involved, that there's some serious secretive signaling that they actually worship the devil, because I don't think that's the case here. I think this is tone deaf, that this is a really bad attempt to infantilize the faith. I'm not the only one who thinks about this. You will be hard-pressed to find a more mainstream voice on our side of things than Raymond Arroyo. He says the Vatican has announced the official mascot of Holy Year 2025. It's an anime character called Luce, for light. Featuring a blue-haired prepubescent waif in a raincoat might not be the most edifying image at this moment for the church, nor is this photo. And then he starts getting people's responses, and people think it's a joke. That's an AI image. It's pretty funny, though. They have no idea how they are viewed, no self-awareness. And that you could sum up as one of the biggest problems in the church today. They have no idea what it looks like when they do this stuff. Kelly says, I suspect they're trying to appeal to children or people that like that. Reminds me of the Olympic mascot from Tokyo, I think. Well, they're going to be using this thing to try to reach out to Japanese Catholics, which is also another form of pandering. Catholic sacred art, classical, some of the neoclassical modern Catholic art that is actually sacred, when it is truly sacred and made from the love of God, that internal faith that is actually rightly ordered, art becomes the expression of that internal piety. And that speaks volumes to people, far more than something like this. And when I say we're getting mocked, the Catholic Church is getting mocked for this. This is a website called Not the Bee, run by the same people who run the Babylon Bee. Yes, they're Protestants. Babylon Bee and the Not the Bee. Babylon Bee makes some wonderful, hilarious memes most of the time, although they did insult the Virgin Mary recently, because of course they did, because Protestantism. But Not the Bee publishes real stories that you would think are Babylon Bee stories. And here they publish Catholic Truth Church introduces anime mascot for 2025. And here they say, just in time for Reformation Day. Again, tone deafness. Absolutely tone deaf. Archbishop Fisichella also unveiled the official mascot of the Holy Year 2025, Luce, Italian for light, a cartoon pilgrim dressed in a yellow raincoat, mud-stained shoes, wearing a missionary cross and holding a pilgrim staff. Luce's glowing eyes feature the shape of scallop shells, a traditional symbol of pilgrimage and hope. Kind of looks like Coraline. The mascot, the Archbishop said, was inspired by the Church's desire to live even within the pop culture so beloved by our youth. And they're taking the mascot on the road to Osaka, Japan, at Expo 2025, along right side by side with actual sacred art by Caravaggio. I don't know what that is, so we're going to not let that happen. Oh, that was take me to X. But you get the idea. They're going to actually have Caravaggio. Caravaggio's enough, okay? I'm not the one to sit there and yell, sulfur and secret devil worship being put on display for people. It's bad optics. This is bad optics. And that's really the main takeaway, is that these people are out of touch with reality. And being out of touch with reality is kind of something that Archbishop Viganò wants us to understand. I think Taylor Marshall reported on this yesterday. He issued a brief reflection on Synod on Synodality. The Synod on Synodality is out of touch with reality. It just was. The biggest problems in the church today is that Catholics don't believe in Catholicism anymore. And that's because their bishops, our bishops, especially the ones with a lot of influence, in many cases, not all cases, some bishops are very good, many of them don't believe in Catholicism anymore either. As I've been collecting news stories for later in the week and for next week, trust me on this one, plenty of bishops are practically coming out now and saying they don't believe in Catholicism anymore. So Archbishop Viganò issued his first letter that wasn't just for a feast day in quite a while to give you his thoughts on the Synod on Synodality. I do have to be a little careful when we talk about this, because he does use a term that is common from the Bible, but our overlords on this totally free and fair site drop the hammer on you for using. So, or at least they did to me every time I did in the past. His letter is extremely short. He says, the Synod on Synodality that has just concluded is a perfect icon of the duplicitous and fraudulent nature of the conciliar and synodal church. The usual promotion of the worldwide program is all too evident. The hierarchical subversion of the equality of the flesh is at the origin of the surreal discussion about the ordination of women, of which a pastoral experimentation has already been approved to begin, that will serve in the near future as an alibi for the official modification of the doctrine on the sacrament of holy orders. The same way, the acceptance of the James Martin ideology, which is also an objective of those with all the power that they should not have, was obsequiously transposed to the Synod after the premise was laid in Fiducia Supplicans. The established church acts in total rupture from and in opposition to the ecclesial body, exactly as their equivalents in the secular world work against the interests of citizens. Regardless of the individual articles of faith that the Synod tampers with pastorally, it is also evident that the ultimate goal that Bergoglio has set for himself is to destroy the Catholic Church by distorting the nature of the papacy, as their Lord established it. The Church of Jorge Mario Bergoglio is a synodal church. Therefore, it is neither monarchical nor divine, but democratic and human. Its authority is not vicarious of the sacred power of Christ, but rather a false and deceptive expression of a supposed will of the people. Or even worse, it is a sign of the spirit that a subversive organization is hiding behind. Faithful Catholics are being deceived by false shepherds and mercenaries. Everything in the words and actions of the synodal church is a lie, because its purpose is to impose by authority, under the guise of a request from the grassroots, things that no faithful Catholic has ever asked for, because they contradict the teaching of our Lord. The authority, which has been usurped for the opposite purpose to that for which Jesus Christ established it, is completely illegitimate. It is now the duty of each and every successor of the apostles to denounce the synodal farce. The final phase of the conciliar revolution, with which the bride of the Lamb has been replaced by the woman who has the world's oldest profession of Babylon, that is subversive to the system of our rulers. There are those who believe that the alarm about Bergoglio's subversive intentions is excessive and unfounded, citing as an example of his intermittent orthodoxy his latest encyclical on devotion to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. This document represents a diversion to deceive the faithful, according to the well-tested strategy of deception typical of the Jesuit and Peronist Bergoglio, confirming his duplicity and intellectual dishonesty. The argument made in Delexit Nos, treated in an apparently anti-modern key, constitutes a clumsy attempt at fraudulent reappropriation by the Society of Jesus of the following of the Sacred Heart, which it has been the historical custodian. This devotion, which arose to counter the Jansenist heresy, will inevitably be distorted to give the appearance of the theological rigor to the opposing heresy. That is, to a form of doctrinal and moral laxity that admits everything is morally permissible, because it has supposedly already been healed and forgiven by the infinite mercy of God. Such false devotion is perfectly consistent with the Synod's aims. Published day before yesterday, probably late in the evening, on the 27th of October by Archbishop Viganò. And I think this art thing that we were talking about just a moment ago is the perfect example of what he's talking about. Perfect example. It's the out of touch with reality thing. No Catholic asked for what's going on at the Synod. At least no faithful Catholic who wants the same religion as our ancestors, regardless of what other opinions we have on the new Mass versus the traditional Mass, the Eastern rites versus the Latin West. Whatever our opinions are on that aside, anybody who has the faith didn't want deaconettes. Nobody wanted the decentralization of authority. What we wanted was the Catholic Church to act like the Catholic Church and for popes to act like popes. That's what we all wanted. Speaking of wanting our actual church leaders to act like church leaders, the Synod on Synodality has been the gift that really and truly keeps on giving. You see, the Synod on Synodality may have ended several days ago, but that hasn't actually stopped anybody in the church from using now the Synod and this decentralization schema and this new liturgy that they're talking about. Yes, they are talking about a new Mass and talking about it very openly. They're now talking about what they want to see from this, because it's not just traditionalist alarmism. This is something they're honestly talking about. So Gloria TV, headline: Polish cardinal wants liturgical reform. The Eucharist must be synodal, less priest-centered. The Eucharist is not priest-centered. The Eucharist is Christ-centered, especially when the priest is actually facing liturgical east, meaning he has his back to the people when offering the Mass, because he is orienting himself entirely to God. And he faces that direction because, liturgically speaking, the church is constantly taught that's the direction for God. And when he faces that direction, he is facing what he's worshiping, and he is acting as the head of the body worshiping, meaning the parish, meaning you and I. We're all in it together. He is the head, because he is the one offering the sacrifice. It's not priest-centered, it's God-centered. God-centered liturgy isn't necessarily something that a lot of these more strident folks have been wanting in the church in the last few decades. They talk about the era of being man-centered. That was stuff that they talked about in the 60s. We were opening the windows of the church to the world to get some wisdom of the world into the church, to reorient ourselves towards man and his condition, as if we weren't supposed to be focused on God almost entirely. And they're taking their opportunity to take the next logical step here, as you will see in this piece from Gloria TV, the news service there. From the article, quote, liturgical reform has not yet taken place, said Cardinal Grzegorz, 60, of Luce, Poland, at a press conference in Rome on the 27th of October. He, the cardinal, believes that the liturgy cannot be the action of one priest, but must be synodal with the participation of all. The news outlet he had spoken to asked Cardinal Reese about the final document of the Extraordinary Synod, which draws an analogy between Eucharistic and synodal assemblies. Cardinal Reese is a member of the dicastery for the liturgy. Let's pause. You have a member of the dicastery for the liturgy being right up front with you and drawing a distinction between the Eucharistic assembly, that means the holy sacrifice of the Mass, and whatever this new synodal thing they're going to do. They're drawing a distinction there, and this is a high-ranking official in the dicastery of the liturgy, the Roman Curia body whose main job it is to govern all things related to the liturgy. Anytime if you hear a story about Pope Francis, say, rewriting the Our Father for Italy, it would have come through this. If you hear a story about, some new feast day, and has a new calendar and a new section for the Novus Ordo Missae, it's coming through this place, at least partially. It's a very important, especially important dicastery in Rome. And here he is talking about how the Mass must be synodal with participation of all. This active participation stuff has been their rallying cry since well before Vatican II. Even Pope St. Pius X paid some service to this by saying the way to address active participation is to have people, the laity, praying the hymns or singing the hymns with the priest at a high Mass and praying the Our Father aloud with the priest. That was enough active participation for him Or you could pray a rosary during the Mass or anything else, as long as you united your prayers to the priest at the altar. But that has never been good enough for this revolutionary group in the church. They want a truly synodal liturgy where you are truly active in the Mass. Okay, this is him acknowledging the distinctions between the synodal group hug liturgy that they've been talking about and the Eucharistic assembly, meaning the Mass, and then trying to erase that distinction. Again, a new Mass is coming if they get their way. Here's what he says. Quote, his vision of the Eucharist, quoting him directly, the liturgy has a comprehensible language. The priest has turned towards the congregation. New books have been published, but the liturgy still looks like a one-actor theater, i.e. there is a priest, and that is the end of the gathering of active people in the church. It means that the reform has not taken place. To which they respond, Reese should open his eyes and look around, because there were places where his fantasies were put into practice, but nothing remains of them. End quote. Meaning the most liberalized places in the church for the Mass have no attendance at Mass anymore, or virtually none. But he is saying something at least vaguely truthful there. There is this sense. I've heard one seminarian describe it this way. This was a seminarian who described it, the new Mass, at times in the more blatantly irreverent expressions of it, looking like the Eucharistic cooking show. And that was a seminarian saying this, somebody who got screened and made it to seminary in a very, very conservative diocese, where the bishop there takes very seriously the quality of men he allows to enter the seminary. And that's how he described it. I want to identify who this person was, the seminarian after all, but that's how they've described it. And that's what he's kind of describing here too, in the weirdest way. But instead of the Catholic solution to this problem being, let's elevate the sacred, sense of the sacred at the Mass, at the new Mass and at the old. Instead of elevating the sense of the sacred, let's make it more man-centered. That's what synodality is at the end of the day, is man-centeredness. Everything we're talking about today, it's man-centered, your own interior feelings and all that nonsense as the entire source and summit of your faith. It's little wonder that a lot of people no longer believe in the Eucharist anymore, believe in the real presence, that many Catholics acknowledge what the church says about the real presence, and they believe it's just a symbol anyway, instead of truly containing the body, blood, soul, and divinity of our Lord. Because we have stopped treating sacred things like they are sacred things. That anime story from earlier is an example of that. Not treating sacred imagery like sacred imagery anymore. It's why we should object to AI representations of sacred images. Because we have divorced the sacred from the truly authentic Catholic experience. And we just watered it all down. All of this stuff is connected. Synodality may end up being a curse on the church. It's not going to be a new springtime as they talk about it. You remember, they've been talking about a new springtime in the church since about 1965. And now they're doubling down on attempting to kick off a new springtime and what can only be described as, Laura says, self-centeredness, man-centeredness. We need to put God back at the center through sacred art, truly reverent worship, and of course, living as Catholics do. And we as Catholics, who are traditionally minded, that's why I use that term, can, despite our other differences, debate what those mean among ourselves, but at least try to live it in practice when we go to Mass, and hope that our priest will give us good Masses and the other things that go with that. Mar says the mascot signifies the infantilization of the Catholic faith. Absolutely. That's what I said at the start of this. Let me take a look here in the final thoughts in the live chat before we wrap this up. John Dillon says if a new Mass is coming in no longer with Rome, it cannot be because it will no longer be Catholic. I would just say go find the sacraments where you can. Stay in a Catholic church, though. Don't necessarily go to a group that went schismatic, went actually into actual schism centuries ago or whatever. Just stay Catholic. Just hold on to the faith. St. Vincent of Lerins told us, I brought you the commentary from him. When you see novelty introduced in the church, your duty is to cling to the faith. He says that repeatedly throughout his work, and he's a doctor of the church. So listen to him on this. He was dealing with the crisis of the followers of Arius back in the 4th century. And it equally applies to today. Stay Catholic. Don't follow these people seeking novelty. Cling to the faith. All right, folks. We'll end on some good news here. So I'm telling some good news. His mother's surgery, which he brought up in the live chat yesterday, seems to have gone reasonably well. So thanks for the prayers, everyone. If there's any final thoughts in the live chat, bring them up now. Otherwise, we are going to wrap this up because I have a news story for you today that you will definitely want to pay attention to. And please also, if you could, be praying for everything going on in the world right now, that people don't get too heated with things that are building and building and building towards next week. Because I think people need to, despite all the great temptations, to be unchristian towards one another and not to have a Catholic response to things. There's a great temptation right now with people reaching a boiling point. So please pray for everything related to that. All right, folks. Thanks very much for tuning in today. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.